Sweet. The unofficial, official intro to the episode. Welcome back to your finest hour, everybody. If you're watching on YouTube, just because I said that I will always start saying this, thank you for watching. If you're on Spotify, thank you as well for listening. Today I have Zach, who I found again on Matchmaker. So big thumbs up to Matchmaker. He is going to be able to speak to a lot of the AI in the workplace conversations. He's done his own research. He's got his own business or his own private practice. He's done a lot of other like awesome stuff. I got his notes right in front of me, but I'm going to let him introduce himself and then we'll get back to the conversation.
Awesome. Well, thanks, first of all, so much for letting me be here. I appreciate you letting me crash your afternoon. Again, my name is Zach. I'm a recruiter by trade and a career coach, and I'm based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Dude, so first question is, so Zach is a part of is it called a board for
Yeah,
your hockey team?
I mean, I'm being honest. It's a smaller hockey organization, but yeah, technically, I'm on the board.
How does that work? What decisions do you have to make? Like what's the background of that?
So my job is working with the nonprofit side of the organization. So I work on community engagement. So I'm working to help us find sponsors and to get donations to help people just be able to play hockey. I'm a part of the Minnesota Blue Ox organization, and they want to bring hockey to the North Metro. If you're from Minneapolis, you know that hockey in the North Metro is not as prominent as like the South Metro or across the river over in St. Paul. And so a lot of the work that I'm doing with the team is helping us find sponsors so we can put on workshops and camps and things like that to get people in who might not have access to the sport originally, to hopefully get them hooked and get them playing for the rest of their lives.
That's pretty sick. And you said you weren't even like a big hockey guy. You just like recently got into the sport.
No, I was not a big hockey guy. So I've been in Minneapolis for like 2 years. Before that, I lived in South Dakota and I grew up in Nebraska. And I've, moved around to a couple places, but never really got into hockey until I moved here and just happened to see that there was a team sort of near our area. And it was like $5 to go watch them play for kids, 10 for adults. So it was like a great day to like take the family out. It was just a really great experience, good energy. The Blue Ox team had like a great presence on social. You could tell they really took it seriously and just fell in love with it. And then from there, just, kind of grew. And, now tonight, or whenever this airs, the Wild go up against the Avs, round 2, game 3. Fingers crossed that it goes our way. But if not, at least we beat the Stars out. And yeah, now I'm hooked.
Dude, that's sick. I got a buddy in a class, and he recently invested in like this local soccer team, and it was just like him and his wife, and I forgot how much he paid for it, but it was like a decent amount. And he's like, yeah, dude, I just like love soccer. And he's like the co-founder of the team or whatever, and they just won their local like championship. And so now they just won a stupid amount of money. And so he's like hiring coaches and like all this other stuff.
It's incredible. I have no idea how much it costs to buy a team. The Blue Ox, we have a new owner who bought the team a couple years ago. I've been trying to work up the nerve to ask him how much he paid for it because I really am curious. Even if I could buy one that's like the lowest possible tier,
Yeah, yeah.
I think it would be such a fun investment to have, and it actually does something for the community, which is a lot cooler than like buying a car wash or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm like an extreme extrovert, kind of like what I was talking about at the beginning of the or before we started recording, that I feel like I would just like walk up to that dude and be like, yo man, how much you pay for this, bro? Like what and a lot of people are like super caught off guard by that. But yeah, okay, small tangent. So first question I have for you is, what is the AI gap and why should people care about it right now?
So the AI gap, how to best explain this? So basically what it is, it's the gap of work that AI can already do versus the work that it cannot do. So according to MIT, it's something like 11.7 or 0.8% of the US workforce. The tasks that they do regularly can already be done by AI. And so they call it the iceberg effect. But what I've sort of identified with it is that it's more of a gap because it's creating this cliff, so to say, where entry-level jobs are just not needed as much. And then the roles that traditionally exist, where you start with a firm or you start in a field and you develop your sort of starting foundation in that world, those roles are being automated. And so then this entry-level position no longer exists. And so you go from novice and then this big cliff to being just proficient in whatever it is you do, what we can usually consider mid-level. And so now there's this gap, and people are trying to figure out how to navigate it. And depending on what work you do and where the market goes, that cliff is either going to get taller or is going to start to shrink.
Where's the highest effective market?
So there's really, surprisingly enough, there's kind of two main avenues that is being utilized to create this cliff where it's getting a little bit bigger. So the first is actually in specialty practices. So junior lawyers, if you're just starting out at a firm, like reviewing contracts, making edits to contracts, things like that, that can be done by ChatGPT. There's some discussion whether that's ethical or smart, but it can be done. People are starting to use it. We're starting to see AI law firms pop up. And so when you're first coming out of law school, usually the path that I've seen with people is that they either go into clerking or they go and they become, the lowest rank person in the law office. And that's the sort of things that they do. They're going through evidence, they're going through case notes, they're making contract adjustments. So a good chunk of that work is being taken away. Same thing can be said for people who are like in other white collar specialty roles like accounting, engineering. Those basic mathematical equations can be done. That's usually handed as grunt work to someone else. That can be done now, and then it just saves the firm money. The other one is, sort of what we would expect. So like, customer service people, things like that. Like if you're working in a call center, if you're, everything from someone who answers the phones to help customers to people who are calling people to collect their bills, those roles are all very much at risk as well. And so you have this weird gap where it's affecting both the high end and the bottom end, so to say. And again, kind of depending, a lot of this is going to depend on how these models end up evolving and really what their processing power ends up being. If the cost of running these models becomes more expensive than using people, I imagine we will start to see a reversal. But for right now, where it's sort of this race to market share, it's becoming really cheap. It's actually like, do you remember when COVID happened and like there is like this war between like DoorDash and Uber Eats and Postmates, and like everyone was trying to get your business to get you to deliver stuff? You remember that? Like, boom.
Yeah.
Everything was super cheap, right? And then as soon as DoorDash and Uber Eats came out as the big two on top, all those fees started to rise, and now we order a lot less DoorDash. Something similar is going to eventually happen with these AI models because they're competing on price right now per token. And eventually someone's going to come out on top and they're not going to need to compete on price anymore. And then we're going to see this cost per token rise. And then it's going to become a real conversation of, is it cheaper to actually use people instead of AI?
That'd actually be a really interesting phenomenon, I feel like, because right now, I can't even like imagine that right now, just simply because it seems like everyone, at least in like my circles and like, I work for defense contracting and stuff, but like in those circles, it's like everyone's racing to see how they can improve their workflows. And to me, feels like the dumbest way possible. It's like, how can we use AI to like solve all these like big problems and you're spending all this time just understanding the technology when the answer, at least in a context like that, is like very simple. It's like, oh, well, like just buy this plane, get this radar, like add the radar to the plane and all this other stuff. And people are spending so much time just like, how much does that cost? And then it throws like some random number, hallucinated number out at you. But I'm trying to wrap my head around this concept just because this is, for a lot of the people listening to, like, this is kind of our first exposure to these kinds of things. And so I think as we're talking about it, a lot of the notes that I've written down will kind of be answered in the next string of questions. And the first question that I have is like, if I'm getting out of the military, just for this specific audience, if I'm getting out of the military and I have a niche set of skills and I go on LinkedIn, like we talked about LinkedIn early, LinkedIn is kind of the first stop shop for like how to get a job, quote unquote, at least from our perspective. So like if AI is kind of taking over LinkedIn, like what am I supposed to do?
That's a good question. I'm going to be honest with you. At this point in time, I don't have a really clear answer, but I've got a couple hunches. So for context, AI or LinkedIn has become, it's respectful to all of my people who use LinkedIn, like LinkedIn. It's kind of become a cesspool of spam and AI junk. And as a recruiter, like for context, right? My background's in recruitment. I, at one point, was working for a Fortune 500 company in the go-to-market space, and we were doing an insane amount of hiring to basically try to put elbows out against our competition when, again, COVID money was really flowing. And it's a great tool for recruiters, but during that big push, I mean, this was years ago, I realized how much just garbage and lying there is on there. And so if you're first coming into your career or you're trying to make a change or anything like that, obviously it's a great place to like build a profile, have a landing page, showcase your skills, things like that. But it's not the one-stop shop powerhouse that it used to be anymore. You have to have some other avenues. And for a lot of people, it's going to come down to sort of, I would call like unorthodox networking. It's a lot less about, hey, my name's Bill and I just got out of the service and I know how to do XYZ, and more about going on LinkedIn, find people that had your same position or are in the spaces you want to be, and be really aggressive about reaching out to people and saying, just telling them who you are and what you're looking for. In a world where we're becoming a lot more isolated and siloed by ourselves, where people can do a lot more with AI, people, in our experience, we've done some outreach surveys. People are really responsive to people reaching out now because it makes them feel good. Get the quick release of oxytocin that you're helping someone else. And networking now, in my experience with our surveying, is far more effective than it's been probably in the last 7 or 8 years. Like, actually send the messages, have conversations, be a person.
Yeah. And then in a previous podcast, I think I listened to with you talking in it, one of the key points is like the volume. And so just for my own like internal processing, it was, I forget the exact like context, but it was like mass versus targeted kind of, as far as like, recruiting, I think was the context. But where I'm going with that question is, when I got out of the service, the first thing that I did was go to LinkedIn. I didn't know anything about this unorthodox networking. I was just like, these are the people that I know. I'm going to reach out to them, but also like, I'm just a volume results kind of guy. And so I applied for, in 30 days, I applied for, I think 75 jobs, and I got a ton of interviews, but I only got one job offer out of that. And a lot of my buddies were like, damn, dude, that's a lot. But in my head, I was like, well, yeah, that's kind of the price you pay. But I think from something that I've consumed that you've created is like, that's not even scratching the itch. Like, you got a 10 times that almost.
Yeah, it's gotten a lot worse. There's two main schools of thought that you can really go down, and with my clients, I want to combine both, right? So there is just the mass numbers side of things. If you put out 500 applications, you're eventually going to get some number of interviews. That's just math. And then you can be super targeted and only apply to jobs where you have someone who will vouch for you and things like that, and that will eventually work. They're both really time consuming. So what is going to give you the best results with the lowest number of applications, is still going to be a lot more than you want, is for you to kind of narrow in both, right? So you want to make sure that the roles you're applying to are actually something that you're qualified for, that you have a fit for, that you have someone in your past who can vouch for your skills, but you still want to get as many as you can through the application process, because it's going to be a lot. And it can't just be applications anymore either. You have to do that cold outreach as well, especially if you want to get into something that's like a career pivot, or you're trying to upgrade your skills, or try to get into a more like prestigious firm or organization. Having someone who you can actually have vouch for you or anything like that is super important. This is actually an example from my own experience. When I started out as a recruiter, I just moved into a different role, and they wanted me to hire a learning and development specialist. And they asked me if I could do that. And because I was young and didn't know what I was doing, I said, absolutely, I can. Had no idea what I was looking for. Talked to the hiring manager, got the list of needs, still didn't know what I was doing. So one of the first things I did was I walked down the hall to our learning and development team. I was just like, can one of you guys explain to me what you do every day? Like, just being willing to have those conversations made it so I, as a recruiter, knew what to look for, and then I could think outside the box. So if you're trying to go and get into a different role, even if you can find someone who they're not going to be able to like give you a reference or hire you, you just find someone who you might know, or you've got like a friend of a friend, or like your third connection or whatever. We're going to the LinkedIn analogy. You'd be surprised if you just reach out to them and say, hey, would love to break into your field. How do you get into it? You'll probably get someone back. I mean, I have clients who have done that exact same thing. And you do get people who are like, oh, I love what I do. Here's how I got started in it. This is what I learned. And that's super valuable information for us as coaches to continue to help you with the search, but for you as well to position yourself.
Yeah, and you're saying that's through cold outreach, as in like you don't know these people whatsoever. You just like Google some jobs that you want to do. You see that they do that job, and you just reach out to them. You're like, hey, I want to do this. How did you get into it?
Yeah. And surprisingly enough, this is going to sound really corny, but just bear with me. Life lacks a lot of like wanderlust anymore. Like, you're never excited to get the mail, right? It's just credit card junk, spam, and
Yeah,
bills.
yeah,
So
100%.
if you get a LinkedIn message and it's somebody, they're not asking for anything. They're just like, hey, I think what you do is cool. How did you start doing it? That person automatically wants to help you because they're like, but this, no one's ever asked me that before. Like, life lacks a lot of that human touch and that wanderlust anymore. And so if you can tap into that, just like being genuine, you'd be surprised how many people will help you, will come to bat for you.
Has this always been the case, like in your experience? Because I actually think that male example is like pretty good. There's plenty of times, just again, like extrovert, like I'll go on LinkedIn, and if I see a buddy of mine from like 7 years ago, like post something, I'll immediately just like hit them up. Or like if you, because LinkedIn's like pretty good for like reach and like interconnections and all other stuff. So like it'll show your third connection to your example, like is doing this, that, and the other. And I will straight up just message people just because, I don't know, I like talking to people, I guess. But with that, I feel as if, and again, I'm new to the LinkedIn space, but I feel as if that networking piece, like, it didn't really exist 6 years ago, 7 years ago, probably pre-COVID is like the example I'll use, I guess. Like, do you share that experience? Like, do you feel like that's changed?
So I think pre-COVID, in my experience and throughout my career, networking was very much like a finance bro kind of term. I don't really have a better way to explain it. Like, it was something that you were supposed to do, but no one really knew what it meant. It was like, oh, like I reached, like I'm connect, like for example, when I got started in my career again, like I just want to get connected to as many high level people as I can. I got like connected with like district managers of fast food chains and like one random COO, like a car wash chain in Atlanta. And I was like, yeah, I'm really networking. And that never got me anywhere. Never did
These are all just
anything.
random people. Yeah.
Right. It's like, and like, still to this day, like I like obviously doing what I do, I have to use LinkedIn a lot. I don't love it, but I'm there. And yeah, like I'll get updates from people. I'm like, I have no idea who this is. Like I have no context. Like there's no like it's just, it's like people with like 1,000 Facebook friends. Like you don't know all these people. You're a liar. But since COVID happened and we all kind of got like pulled away and isolated, I think humans being humans were really good at sort of ring fencing ourselves from pain. And so what we started to do, I think, was we stopped doing the networking thing because it was ingenuine. Like it just hurt to get rejected again and again and again. And so now when something genuine comes around, it's really exciting for us. And networking has now become less of a, hey, help me get something, and more of a, hey, I want to know more about you. And as you can lead with that curiosity, you're going to learn a lot more from people, and people are going to be a lot more responsive to you. Even like, again, like in my own work, I do have people who reach out occasionally and they want to know about the practice or whatever. But sometimes people will just reach out, and it's not very often. I'd say like maybe once or twice a month, and they'll be like, hey, I've got a big interview coming up. Got any tips? It's like, absolutely, random person I've never talked to before. And I'd love to help you because that's awesome. I'm really touched that you would choose me to be the person to reach out to.
Do you feel like going back to the COVID example, why does it feel so hard to get a good job now? I think is the question that I want to ask.
Oh, man. It's a good thing this is a long form conversation. It's a lot of things. The biggest thing that I found in our own surveying of people is there's just this feeling of hopelessness because there's a lot of false, this is going to sound really down, but I want to be straight with you. Hope has become a commodity in every industry right now. People are selling hope. They're selling the idea of connectedness. And the same thing is true in recruitment. In any industry, doesn't matter if you're like in construction or SaaS products, you are going to market your job similar to the way you market your product. And so there's a lot of ghost jobs that get posted that aren't actually being filled. There's a lot of like, we don't require a whole lot of experience, but you actually do, because you want to get the most number of applicants so you can pick the best of the best of the best. And so it's become hyper competitive by design because that allows hiring organizations and headhunters and everyone else in between to be more selective. And it's almost taken on, I'm going to start picking on some people here, but it's almost taken on a similar model to like elite education. Like Harvard will brag about how many people they didn't let in, right? Recruiters will now talk about how they only interview the top 5% of candidates, which is good for the organization, but then it does beg the question, well, how many people applied in the first place and how big is the competitive pool? And so it is just systematically a lot harder than it used to be. And so there's not a whole lot that I or any other coach can do about that. That's why, like looping back to the start of this, that's why the numbers are so important. You have to put the volume out there because math is math. At some point, the applications are going to average out.
What would you say is an ideal amount of volume for if I want to get a job and I'm in a technical field? What is, like, as a career coach, like, what would you say, like, yeah, that's pretty good?
Well, I'll give you the averages. So what I tell my clients when I'm working with them is 45 to 50 applications on average should get you 3 interviews. And again, that's averaging across the client base. There's some variation depending on specialty or niche, but 50 applications should convert you to 3 interviews. Now the downside to that is out of those 3 interviews, I think the last time we ran the numbers, there's a 0.7, like out of 3 interviews, 0.7 will convert to an offer. So rounding up, 1 will turn into an offer.
And at that point, it's just a numbers game. So if I do 50 interviews in a week, let's call it, which is, again, we use we use me as the example, like earlier, right? Like 75 in a month. And I was like, oh, I'm exhausted, right? Like, so just for easy math, if I'm looking for a job, which is pretty stressful, right? 50 interviews in a week will grant me, generally speaking, 3 interviews. And if that's, let's just call it 1% interview to offer, like, it sounds like in a 3-month period. And the reason why I'm using like these specific numbers, right? Like my audience being military, typically they have, like as they're leaving the service, they have a specific amount of time in which, like if they have their leave saved up, the government will give them their leave back and basically say like, hey, you're done. Thanks for your service. Like you can take all that time off now. And so in that process, a lot of people will like hunt for jobs. They'll use like, the different like resources and stuff, but let's just call it in that 60-day period. A lot of people are still unable to find jobs because the military, for the example, is I can't think of the term. It is a guaranteed, like you sign a contract. So it's not like the corporate world, quote unquote, where I get hired in a company and if the company doesn't need me in a year, like they'll just cut me. In the military, like if whatever job you're doing is no longer needed, like you sign the contract, so they will make a job for you somewhere else. And so I think it's really important. That's something that I've recently learned being out of the service for a year. And so I think it's important for the audience to understand in a 60-day period, you are going to need to do what feels like almost like 200 to maybe 300 applications. Does that track?
Unfortunately, yes, it tracks. Getting a job has become a full-time job. And so a couple key pieces of advice I'll give for that is if you know that your employment is ending, start a lot sooner than you think you need to. If you're in a position where you currently are not working, make it your full-time job. Get 150 applications out in a week. Really push the numbers. And then the third thing too, do the cold outreach with it. Like I know it's more work. I know that it sucks, but it does really open more doors for you. And even if it doesn't, like it's just good practice. It'll get your name in front of people. Do the cold outreach.
I'm trying to find a way to like, cause it sounds bleak, but like, it's not actually as bleak as like it sounds. Like 300, just to use the top end scale is a lot, but at least for me, like I'm a big numbers game guy. So like, if I know that's what it takes to get the thing that I want, which is like a stable income, like I'm just going to do it. Right. But even with that being said, like, obviously that is a lot. How should I be like, I'm going to read applications and I know this is how, some of my military buddies will look at this as well. I'm going to read applications. And as soon as I see a single line that's like, engineer or like engineering, again, we're talking like very like specific to like tech niche, right? I'm gonna see engineering and I'm immediately going to be like, oh, well, I'm not an engineer. And I'm just going to throw that like a job application out of the 300 pile and like go find something else. But I was talking to my fiance recently and she was like, oh, I found a very niche job that had like 100 applications, or 100 applicants. And I was like, how is that possible? There's no way 100 people are qualified for this like extremely niche thing. And she was like, oh, people will just apply to like whatever and just like see if they can lie their way through the chain. But that's one pillar of people. And the other pillar of people I feel like is a lot of the people that I've experienced with in the military that will just like see a thing and immediately discredit themselves. Like, how do you play the balance in that pendulum swing?
So this is actually one of the things that I tackle in the book that we had talked about before we started recording. So the book
Push.
Push,
Yep.
yeah, yeah. So it's even calling it a book is generous of being honest, man. It's more like a guidebook. It's like 100 pages. It really just is like the 6 exercises, some context behind those exercises, and how to actually do them. And there's one in there that I think it's called the mirror. I know I'm a bad person. I should remember I wrote the damn thing. But I think it's called the mirror. But the idea behind it is to look at your relevant skills and your irrelevant skills. You really have to know yourself and value and know what to value and what not to value. And so in those circumstances, like you're talking about, like if you want to go like super niche or super broad, doing mass applications in either will eventually yield you some results. But you want to find the balance between 3 primary things, which is what you actually know how to do, what you're planning to know how to do, and how much you think you should get paid, if we're being completely honest. If you are someone who you just need a job today and you're okay looking at entry level, mid level, senior level, hit them all, great, fine, that's awesome. But if you're someone who you know that you're going to be out of a job in 90 days and you need to be making similar income, you shouldn't be wasting your time on roles that are junior to yours. You should be looking at peer-to-peer roles or senior roles only. If it's a skill set that is completely foreign to you, like you said, you saw engineering and it's like, that's not me, that's totally fine. But if you see something where it's like, well, I know how to do this job, but I haven't used this software or I haven't used this program, who cares? Go for it. You'll learn the software. You know, if they say that we need some experience with it, okay, YouTube University exists. Be honest that you haven't used it in a work format, but you understand it and you can work your way through it. You still want to find that place of between this is what I can do, this is what I have done, and wherever you're comfortable. And that's the thing that as a coach, I can't really tell you without having that one-on-one conversation with you. Because as coaches, that's something that we do, depending on what package you choose to do with us, with our organization. If you want that one-on-one job search support, where we actually go and help you find jobs, those are the sorts of conversations we get into the nitty-gritty about. But even when I'm having deep one-on-one conversations with people, if you can't confidently tell me this is what I can do or what I have done, I can't guess for you. You really have to reflect and figure out those skill sets on your own.
That's actually really good. One common theme that I've been doing is like I'll take notes from these conversations, and I started publishing a lot of the stuff in like a kind of like a curated newsletter of like
Oh, sure.
basically the framework that you just gave as far as finding a job for these people. Because I wouldn't say if you look at them as pillars, but like the know, planning to know, and then how much you want to get paid. I had never considered that just because, again, my background, and I know a lot of people like hadn't even thought of that like kind of stuff. Because again, what we'll do is we'll see a job, we'll immediately think like, oh, well, if I go to a different unit and they ask me to do this thing, at least in the military, they ask me to do this thing. If I have no experience in that, like I'm going to get exposed, like I'm going to get hosed, I'm going to get yelled at,
Sure.
like this, that, and the other. And so the YouTube University like joke, like I didn't even think about that. Like just whatever that thing they're asking you to do, just like YouTube it and be like, oh yeah, I get the concept, like kind of thing. Where me, I'm like, if they ask me if I've used it before, I'm like, no, I've never heard of that before. Like I don't want to be considered a liar, like kind of thing.
Yeah. No, I mean, genuinely, like I tell people that all the time. It's like, well, I've never used that before. I'm like, okay, like go on YouTube for any software. Like you'll find a sales pitch. Watch the sales pitch and like, do you feel like you could do it? Yes, no, maybe. Figure it out from there. On the flip side of that too, though, like you also deal with people who they don't know what they want to do. Like we deal with that a lot too. Like people who they've got good skill sets, but they feel like they're going to be priced out of their role or that there's like changes coming down the pipeline. They don't know what to do next. And they'll come to us with these ideas about like what they should do. And we'll start to like go through the process and it's pretty clear that they're not enthused about what we're finding. And then you have to have the hard conversation like, well, what do you really want? Oh, I don't know what I really want. Like, okay, so let's do something really unorthodox. And this, I don't have a better name for this experiment, but I call it the dead dog paradox. It's like, so imagine you've lost your dog. You live in a small town. Everyone knows that you've lost your dog. And then you get a call from the county. They found a dog that was smeared on the highway by a semi. There's no tag. You can't see the dog because it's been blown to bits, but they can describe what they found, and you can tell them if it sounds like your dog or not, right? So like brown fur, seems like it was roughly this big, things like that. And then we go through this experiment of like, do you want to make $90,000 to $100,000 a year? Yes or no? Okay, you want to make more or less than that? Do you see yourself overseeing a team? Yes. Okay. How big of a team? 15 people? Too many? Okay. 5? Perfect. Why do you feel like you're qualified to oversee a team? Do you feel like you could hire and fire people? Why do you feel like you're qualified to hire and fire people? And like go through this exercise of trying to identify what it is. And then you end up with a list of skill sets and circumstances and pay that you want for someone. And then you can go and to market and figure out what aligns with your skills that you already know that meet those criteria. So even if you don't know what you're looking for, you still have to sit down and have a hard conversation about not only what you can do, but also what you want. And then you can build from there. I need to find a better name than the dead dog paradox, was all I got right now.
No, yeah, that made actually like a ton of sense. But yeah, I can see like like a bunch of my buddies have kids, and they know not to like listen to these episodes with their kids in the car. Yeah. So, but unfortunately my mom will hear this because she like loves to comment on YouTube and be like, oh yeah, listen to this episode, listen to that. So I'm sure she's gonna text me and be like, yeah, what the heck, dude? But that is a phenomenal analogy. Like it makes sense. Like it's very clear. The next question that I have on that is like, if I were to do that, right? And going back to, again, the most ridiculous example of like 300 applications in a month, let's call it. So that's, easy math, like that's pretty much 10 a day, right? With that, and to your point earlier, that's like kind of a full-time job at that point. But like, if you need a job, like you should be doing whatever you need to get a job. But if I'm going down that train, how should I be using AI to help me find a job in that context?
So it's depending on the model, they can be used for different things. So the most obvious example is just idea generation. So if you are like, let's say that you are looking for a remote role as a like head of people for an organization. Let's go a little bit higher up the food chain, so to say. Every organization is going to have some different rah name for that. And so if you just search head of people, you will get results, but you're not going to get as many results as you want. So go to Claude, ChatGPT, whichever one you want, give it your resume, tell it that you're targeting this job title. Can you also give me a list of 5 to 10 other job titles that I would be qualified for based on my resume that have a similar function? So just to kind of like get yourself out of the idea that you have to do this one thing, because people get really tunnel vision like and kind of feel like they're in a box where they have to get this job title. So great for thinking outside the box like that. The other thing it's really good for is helping to customize the resume a little bit. And this is controversial because there are some softwares and AI agents that there's this one called JobRite. I have mixed feelings about it. It helps you fill out applications really quickly, and it customizes your resume based off of whatever the job description is. But the problem is, we all know, it hallucinates a lot. And this one it hallucinates a lot. It'll say that you're
an
done
astronaut.
never
you
done.
should go. Yeah, you should go be the president.
So it's something that it has one function that I love, which is it will go help you find emails for people, like internal emails for cold outreach. I love that tool. The rest of it I hate, because when I have tested it, and we did a pressure test with it because we did have clients who were asking about it. We did a pressure test with it, and I'm not going to try to get sued here, but it hallucinated something like 62% of the time. And not little hallucinations, like you went to Purdue. No, you didn't. Never was mentioned. I don't even know what prompted it to say that. But if you can use it to make little tweaks, right? Like if you're applying to a job and it says that you need to have X years of experience, or your resume doesn't have your years of experience plainly stated, you can use it to help me work this into my professional summary. Okay, great. Quick little changes like that, it's great for. The idea generation about what sort of jobs to look for, awesome. Cover letter generation, also fine, but don't, for the love of God, don't have it write your cold outreach emails, because if it works, they're going to talk to you one day and they're going to realize that you don't sound like a PhD student.
And these are all targeted. So you're saying to use that system, or let's call it a system for now, I guess, but to use that system for all 300 of these applications, or should they be bucketed?
I was gonna say, you really should try to like bucket it, right? So like, let's say at the start of your week, you're gonna go out, start doing applications, use whichever model you want to help you with the idea generation of like what other job titles are out there that I should look for in my search. It's a great time to use it. And then as you're going through, if you know that you've got like a handful of applications that are a little bit different than what you usually target, ask whatever model you're using to tweak your resume for those. Try to be smart about it, work in bunches. But yeah, don't change it for every single application because people forget about this. I've been the recruiter. I will have your resume and I will ask you about specific things on it. And I guarantee you will not save that copy if you are changing it every single time. And if I catch you, you're done.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Same thing with like, don't lie in your resume because I will find out.
And so I'm going to bucket them again, just for easy math, like 10 jobs get bucket A resume, 10 jobs get bucket B, and so on and so forth until I hit 30. But 30, which then will equal the 300 in total. But should these all be different types of jobs, or are these different? So what I'm asking there, and just for clarification too, for earlier, people and like the people team, just for the audience, that's like simply like HR. I was talking to my fiance yesterday, like not really sure when that name changed, but for me, I was like, I've never heard of this thing. I don't even know why they called it the people team. Now it makes sense, whatever. But you're saying, so like if I wanted to do an HR related job, I should have 10 resumes filtered to that. And if I wanted to do a more technical job, 10 for that as well, or how should that be split?
Excuse me. I think it really needs to be, how do I explain this? So obviously a lot of it depends on like your circumstances, specialties, things like that. But what you want to do is kind of break it up by whatever you feel like is relevant. So your example is good. Like if you want to apply to roles in human resources, having a resume for that versus a role in like operations, having a separate resume for that. But also if you're someone who you're in a position where you're okay making a lateral move or a senior level move, having a resume for those lateral roles versus senior level roles is smart. Really just whatever you want to change for that group of applications that you've got in your mind, making a resume that kind of like generally covers that bucket is smart. And again, like if you're working with a coach one-on-one, this is something that we can help you with a lot easier than a, like kind of a free-flowing conversation. But the idea is to just sort of know what your goal is for those buckets. Like we'll keep using that visual. You know, you got bucket A, B, and C, and you know that A, B, and C are in different departments, but C is also like all senior level roles. That's going to require a little bit more customization than A and B. And again, you're not completely rewriting your history, right? Like you're not gutting it and then starting from scratch. You're just leaning into different things. We talk a lot with our clients about this thing called the career story, because every story has a beginning, middle, and end. So where you've been, where you are now, and where you're trying to go, that's your career story. And depending on what that next chapter of your story is, you want to lean into different things. So if you're trying to move into a lateral position, then you want to show that you're better than your peers. So you're going to lean into like the specifics of what you actually do every day, like the metrics that you affect. Whereas if you're trying to get into a promotion, you want to focus more on ownership, because if you've already been in your role for however long, you've probably already proven you can do it, but ownership is a whole nother thing in an organization. So you want to lean into that. If you're trying to change departments, then you need to focus on like cross department functionality, or like any partnerships that you've had with other things, or any skill sets that you think could move into that. And so what you want the next story to, or the next chapter of your story to be, will depend on how you make those tweaks. Because again, we're not gutting it. We're just kind of leaning one way or the other. It's like, you know, this is like a weird analogy, but you know how like in movies, like the music really sets the tone. If you replace like a really serious track with a less serious track, it changes the way it feels. We're not changing the shot. We're just changing the music.
That is good. I like that. And just a few more questions. You wrote The Strategic Human. What's the core argument behind that? Like, what's the core thesis?
The core argument is that we need to be better as employers about making sure the entry-level roles still exist, and that we have really clear guidelines about how to get people from being new into the field, and then making sure that they can make it to that mid-level. It talks a lot about research done by other organizations. We really just kind of wanted to put together what we think is the best step forward. We talk about we consider the big the big problem, and that's the execution trap. So for decades, career success was defined by speed and quality of execution. If you could write a report better, draft cleaner code, whatever, that meant that you were better than everyone else. But now AI can do all those things. So it needs to be more into the actual tangible value you add to the team inside the building and making sure that the thing that you add, which is the human perspective, isn't oversold or sorry, undersold or looked over.
You think it's easier, like as the individual within a company, you think it's easier for me to just find a new job rather than trying to navigate the promotion within the job that I have now?
Not presently, but that changes a lot and very often. So a couple of years ago, I mean, like 2001 through 2003, let's call it, like it made a lot of sense to job hop. You were going to make a lot more money. It was easier for you to find promotions. I mean, just in my world, I saw people, and as recruiters, we typically stay with organizations for a while because we're sort of the one like bringing in people. We kind of help form the DNA, for a lack of a better term. So, but even in my world in recruitment, I saw people moving really quickly just because there was lots of opportunity for advancement. Well, that's now been clawed back a lot. And so it really depends on the state of the market. I mean, most people are smart enough that you can look at like just Google layoffs. If you're seeing a lot of layoffs, probably best to stay and see what happens. But it really depends on economics more than it does like your internal company culture anymore. The economics determine a lot of that.
How about now? I feel like this may be an unfair question because we're like in a very weird time, but I feel like COVID was even weirder of a time, right? But like, do you think in today's age, if I'm looking for just using that framework that you've provided, right? Like if I'm in a job, I generally like my job. I've been there, let's say, for a year, but I just know that promotion because of politics, like might take longer than I'm expecting. Like, should I stay at that position and try to fight that? Or should I just be like constantly looking for a better, like, does that make sense? Cause this is going to sound like a weird connective tissue, but like, I feel like we have, again, post COVID, I feel like dating feels that way. I feel like restaurants like I feel like that is just where we're at as a society, that people are more likely to just constantly search for the next thing, which isn't always the right thing to do or the best case scenario. But that's just like, it seems like the job market's probably the most advantageous for you to think that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. It's a fair question. It's one of those things that I'm kind of hesitant to give a piece of advice on, and I struggle with this with some clients that we have as well, because overall, my advice is that you should be interviewing, I should say, at least once every 12 to 18 months, just for good practice, right? Get yourself out there, see what's available in the market, see what you're worth. It's always a great thing to find out if someone's willing to pay you more than what you're getting paid now. That's always good to know. And you can, I mean, obviously try to leverage the, any outside offers against your internal employer. But a lot of it comes down to bandwidth, because if you're at like right now is a great time to kind of have this discussion actually, because the job market sucks. The economy sucks. I'm not going to get into politics with anyone, but like just things aren't great right now for a lot of reasons. And if you are gainfully employed and you're making okay money, but you want that promotion and you've got the bandwidth to put out applications and do interviews, that's a really safe place to start that exploration from. But if you're going to do it passively, just because we've started to talk about volume, you're probably not going to find a whole lot right away. So if you're passively looking, it's going to take you a lot longer. And if you're okay with that, that's incredible. Go for it. But you don't want to get yourself into this pickle where you've decided that it's going to take too long to get a promotion and you don't want to leave your job. So then you start spending all your time looking at other jobs. And then inevitably, because we are really bad at doing two things at once, your day job starts to suffer a little bit. Your boss catches on. Now you're kind of in a tight spot. So if you're okay doing it passively, absolutely go for it. But understand that it's going to take you a while to hear back and it's going to take you a while to get anywhere.
Yeah, the job market does blow right now. It's pretty bad. I have a job, you have a job, so like we're fortunate enough to be able to like speak on that. But yeah, it's just like, yeah, it's pretty bad. With that being said, and I feel like this is the last like major question that I have. I feel like this ties the whole thesis together pretty well of like just where we're at in modern times with like AI and jobs and like just all that kind of stuff. My fiance's boss, her son is 22, I believe. And so we live in Vegas. The casino is like, that's just the market out here, is like the game industry and like all that kind of stuff. And they're accountants, right? So like the natural progression of like being an accountant is endless opportunities for jobs out here, right? But because he's so young, so him being influenced by his mom being an accountant, he wants to go and like just break into that field, right? Statistics and all that stuff. But he's in this weird spot because he's like, should I change my degree? Because like AI is destroying this career field. Like they're just going to like do away with all the jobs and just like use bots to like do the statistics and the gaming and all that other stuff. So he's thinking about pivoting to a completely different like career path outside of gaming. But then a month into that, he's like, same deal. Like AI is going to take this, like, like there will be no jobs left. Like, and it's very doomsday focused. Like, I guess the first part to that whole question is like, of like, what can I say to him? Because there's other like parents that listen to this podcast, right? Like, what can I say to him to be like, it's not that bad, dude. Like, yeah, I'm like, it looks bad, but like, gain some skills, talk to some people. Like, what can I tell him?
I have a really long-winded answer with a story, if that's all right.
Full send it, dude.
All right. So history is a great way for us to figure out what we think is going to happen next, because history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. That whole saying that usually is true. And especially when it comes to like new technologies. And so I'm working on another book, actually. It's not really a follow-up to Push, but it is specifically about how AI is affecting the market. And one of the things I wanted to figure out was like, is there anything else that has happened in American history in particular that just seemed like it was going to rock everything, and then it just sort of didn't? So in, I think it was like 1890 to 1940, 1950-ish, New York City only delivered mail by pneumatic tubes. You know what pneumatic tubes are? The thing they use like at the...
I've never heard of that.
Pneumatic tubes are the things you use at the bank, right? Like you go up and you like, they send you the little thing.
Yeah.
That's a pneumatic tube, right? So it's, for anyone at home who doesn't know what it is, it's a tube that you put a canister in, and at the bank you like put your check or your debit card in it, and then you send it and it goes up into the bank, and then the bank does what they need, and then they send it back to you in the little canister. That's a pneumatic tube. So at some point, someone had invented the pneumatic tube and decided that, hey, this is going to be like the future mail deliveries. Before the car was popularized, mail theft was at an all-time high. This was going to be like the solution to mail in New York City. They even sent a letter from New York City. They ran a tube all the way to the White House, sent a tube to the White House. Like it was a huge, big press deal. And a ton of money was spent on it. They had these giant, like 30-pound canisters that they would stuff like 300 letters in at a time, and they would send it everywhere. There's a couple of strategic problems with this. One, they didn't own the land that the tubes were being run under, so they had to pay rent to New York City. Two, there was huge safety concerns because sometimes people would send tubes in too many at a time, or they'd send them at counteracting areas, and then the vacuum would break or it would bust or whatever. So sometimes people died or just lost mail or whatever. And then the third last part is that it was just super, super expensive to build all the pieces for this, because it was a technology that was really, really specialized. And what ended up being the end of it, with the final nail in the coffin, was the car became popularized, and then people would just deliver mail by truck, which was a lot cheaper. No one died. Well, I mean, less people died. And there was not all this like stuff going on. So in my mind, AI data centers are having to rent space under the roads. The safety concerns we have about generative AI are the tubes blowing up. And the car being popularized is whatever is going to come next. And the pneumatic tube eventually found its place in basically being inter-building delivery, right? The pneumatic tube didn't die. It just moved into something else. AI is very much in the boom phase right now. It's cool. It's exciting. There's a lot of people who have spent way too much money trying to force this down people's throats in places it doesn't need to be. I don't need an AI person to help me at IKEA. That was the last thing I saw last time I went there. Walked in, an AI bot was like, do you need directions somewhere? I'm like, no, I'll follow the arrows on the floor.
No way. It's like a physical, like a robot?
It's just a giant screen. I walked in. I was like, hi, welcome to IKEA. It recognized me. It was like, do you want help going to, like, I was like, last time I was there, I bought a plate or something like that. It's like, do you want directions over here? I was like, nope, I'm good. Just kept walking. All that to be said, whatever comes next
That's
is
insane,
going
dude.
to relegate AI to what it's good at. And what it's good at right now is it's really good at math, but it can't count. Like, that's a good example. You ask ChatGPT to count to like 60, it can't, but it can do mathematical equations. It can generate stuff, but it looks the same. So if you are starting out in accounting or architecture or anything else, yes, it's going to cause some disruption, but it's a tool for you to get better at it. If you're a good accountant, you're a CPA, the federal government's still going to require CPAs to exist, right? They're not going to go away magically. There are still people who are going to need them. Maybe you don't work for like the giant casinos, but you go work for like a family practice somewhere that's required to have one by law. If you're an architect, you still have to go to a good architecture school for any government or municipality to agree to give you money to build anything. Because if it fails and they sue you, they want to know that they sued you for the right reasons. They're not going to trust a chatbot to do that. Whatever is happening right now is just sort of the hype of a new thing. It's all eventually going to settle. It's not going to go away. It'll find its place in the world, but it's not going to replace everything and everyone because humans don't trust it. There's always some innate sense of danger and inhumanness about it. And I know that there's like this push that it's better at all these things. And like, if we all have UBI, the robots do everything, yada, 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 yada. That's not going to happen anytime soon because the processing power is eventually going to run out. The public trust is not getting any better. And the regulatory nature of all world governments is going to hold it back. If he's interested in accounting, he actually wants to be an accountant, you'll find a place. You're probably going to have to get your CPA and then go from there. But like, you're still going to have something. It's just not going to be the grunt work that you thought it was. And thank God it's not. It's going to be something more interesting than that. You can actually then use it as a tool to do something that maybe you find more interesting than just sitting there and crunching numbers about who did and did not cheated blackjack or whatever the hell they do.
How do I use that to either be more competitive or stay competitive in this world where, a callback to the earlier in the episode where you're like, yeah, there's jobs that like are getting posted that may not exist. And like, they're trying to take the top 5% of all these applicants, like that kind of stuff. Like, how do I make myself not even just look more competitive, but like, how do I truly be more competitive in a way that I can then present that to companies for more opportunities? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I mean, it comes down to just being really, really visible. But like I just talked a lot of smack about LinkedIn, but like I said, it is a good landing place. If you can have, I don't know how to say this without having a really corny word for it, but like self-promotion is going to become more and more important going forward. And so if you can directly point to the projects that you've been a part of or the outcomes that you have contributed to, you need to do that. And you need to do it really in a way that's more blatant than has probably been done in the past or has been acceptable in the past. Like, I remember when I first got into the workforce, like we didn't talk about like projects and hiring numbers and things like that on social platforms because it was like considered company data. Well, now you can find out pretty much anything about anyone. If you've been a part of a project and you improved efficiency by like 11% and you can actually have some proof, brag about it. If you can, just get an audience with, people at your company who have some level of influence. If you can like go to a lunch and learn, if you can get connected with people, in your own community, it might be like in the same space as you, do it. Like you said, like you're a natural extrovert, right? This is not a problem for you. Just putting yourself out there more.
Yeah, 100%.
It's
Yeah.
the people who are more introverted, like you're going to have to start saying, I'm the best and believing it because that's what it's going to take. The people who sit back quietly and want to rest on the laurels of like, well, I've been at this company for a long time, or I was a senior level, whatever, at this company and that company. That's all great. Like that's all part of it. Squeaky wheel gets the grease though. It's the same thing with the mass number of applications. If you apply to more places, you'll get more interviews. If you're more vocal about what you actually know how to do, people will start to believe you.
And in what context should I start doing that? So like for your example, I have no issue like just talking to really anybody in my company and being like, hey, what do you need help with? Like, this, that, and the other. But even still, like I don't do a lot of self-promotion. And to be quite frank, it's like kind of hurting the podcast because like I don't. And I should be. but I'm like, I don't really think too much about telling people about the stuff that I do or have accomplished, specifically because of my background and the background of the people listening. We're always touted to be like quiet professionals, just like do the
Sure.
job, keep it pushing. And so, like, what's an easy first step to solving that problem?
If you are like currently gainfully employed, something I tell our clients is to make allies where you're at. Start volunteering to put yourself center stage. So go to, again, I know we just made jokes about it not too long ago, but like the people department and say like, hey, I think that, it'd be really good for people to learn how to do this skill set that I know how to do. Would you help me put together like a lunch and learn? Like make yourself be center stage. Leadership will notice that. That will bode well for you. And then you can point to that later on. Being more open about what you know that's valuable outside of just the context of your job at work, doing something similar like that. That's a great example. A good example of this actually was when like COVID first happened and this like OpenAI like started to get some buzz in like 2020 and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of talk about generative AI. And I had a coworker who just thought it was the coolest thing in the world, and he was a technical recruiter, so like lots of like back end and front end engineers and stuff like that. And he decided that he was going to host like his own like little mini summit about how us as a recruiting team could use AI better. And I thought he was nuts. And now he oversees the recruiting team of a pretty large organization. Probably shouldn't throw him out into the light, but he made us known that he was paying attention to what was coming down the pipeline. He was rewarded for it at that organization, and then he left and he moved into another role. If you are someone who's not currently employed, social media exists for a reason. I get that it's cringy. You don't want to put yourself out there. You're not comfortable in front of a camera, whatever. You'd be surprised how much that helps the clients that we've worked with. You don't have to go on TikTok and, be like, hi, I'm whoever, and this is like what I've done. But you can be like, hey, on LinkedIn, we'll use that as another example. Here's a project I worked on, right? Like make a little graphic, talk about it a little bit, let everyone know that you're open to work, and do that a couple times a week. You're making yourself more visible. As recruiters, we look at your resume when we use LinkedIn Recruiter. Actually, like we'll go like really talk about the specifics of that. That is a software that we go through, we use to find people that we think would be a match when we're trying to find someone specific. It shows me your resume, and it also shows you your profile. And before I invite you to an interview, I go look at your profile to make sure that you didn't post anything problematic, but also to see if you're actually engaging with people. And so if you're putting stuff out there about like, here's what I've been doing, or, oh, I was really excited to be a part of this project with Greg and Bill and Susie, like I see all of that, and that elevates you even higher. Putting yourself out there on social, if you're not employed, is probably your best option. If you're gainfully employed and you don't want to put yourself out on social, make allies within your organization to make yourself visible to your own leadership team.
That's great, dude. The final question I have on that example is, if I already have a job. So you explain like, if you have a job, how to like seek promotion. If you don't have a job, how to get a job essentially, or how to look like more valuable to get a job in that context. Now, what if I have a job, but I'm looking for other opportunities? How do I self-promote without essentially the recruiters at my job being like, yo, what is this guy doing?
Oh, you are just the most excited employee. You can't contain yourself about what you're doing at work. So you got to share everything you're doing at work on LinkedIn, right? It's like, I'm so glad I got to go to San Diego with the sales team this weekend. We brought on this many new clients, and I brought on however many. I'm so excited to be here, right? Like, you're just pushing your own company. But then me as the recruiter, the outside recruiter, is like, hey, look, that guy was like clearly really involved with his team, and like he's clearly got a good rapport with them. I bet he'd be a good fit for the culture. Like, just again, we're not changing the shot, we're changing the music, right? It's the same thing. It's like you're just the most grateful employee ever, but it signals to the rest of us that you are engaged, that you're making results, and that you're good culture fit. And then you're a current employer, because usually the recruiters for your own organization don't pay that much attention to you. They're like, oh, wow, he's so excited to be here. Let's all reshare this now. And now it's in everyone's network. I can't tell you how many times I've seen that, where it's like, I've clocked it because, again, as a recruiter, I'm selfish. I don't want to backfill roles. Like, I've clocked that someone's going to leave. And everyone's like, wow, he really did a great job at that thing. Aren't we proud of him? I'm like, he's going to be gone in 6 months. He hasn't posted on LinkedIn in 2 years, and so he's posted 9 times. I know what comes next.
I was immediately thinking, like, as we were talking about this, I was like, will I have to cut this? Cause like, I don't want, like, I don't, yeah, I was like, I don't know who would listen to this and be like, oh, they found out the tactic, but like, I don't think that's going to be an issue. Yeah. But I immediately was like, are people going to catch on to this? The 77 people that watch this episode. Yeah, man, dude, Zach, I really appreciate that, man. And I actually thought like, not only do I think that the info was super helpful, I actually think it was like extremely helpful to the little space of the internet that I'm trying to like publish this out to. Like a bunch of my veteran friends, like that's probably one of the more common things is like, as soon as veterans get out of, as soon as service members get out of service, become veterans, they kind of like, I don't know what to do with my hands. Like I went from this like hierarchical empire where everyone has a job, and even if you're an idiot, you keep your job, like kind of thing. To especially defense contracting, which is an example that I used earlier, right? Like that one's even weirder, I feel like, because you could win a big contract and then the company's like, oh, we lost this other contract, like you're gone, like kind of thing, right?
Mhm.
So I think it's really important to kind of reiterate, at least to the audience as well, like always be searching for the next thing, like in the most professional way that you possibly can. And then another note that I took is like, even if you don't feel like you're 100% fit to whatever you're applying for, just apply. And like, it sounds like let the recruiters, obviously don't add to the problem, but the people listening to this like aren't going to do that. But even if you're not 100% fit, like you're probably close enough to at least warrant the conversation. So you got anything else to add?
I think the only thing that I would add, and I mean, you let me know if I've overstepped here. I'm not trying to blow smoke up anyone's dress, but being from my background, there's a lot of talk about like veteran recruiting and things like that. And I think that there's a lot of people who mean well, but they don't fully understand it. In my experience with the folks that I've worked with, there's an organization I actually volunteered with a couple of years ago, which is one of the ways I got started in career coaching is I was doing interview prep volunteer for an organization. It was called Foursquare or Four Block or something like that. Y'all are way more qualified to do most things than most people because you come from a place where, like you said, quiet professionalism is really valued. And so you've got the skill set to do a lot more than most civilians do, but you know when to like turn it off and turn it on, right? Which a lot of people like me, for example, I struggle with. I've led some teams in the past. I got a big mouth. I'm very much an ideas guy. I struggle with order and domain, and like I like to build and create and break things on purpose. But y'all come from a place where it's like you're really analytical. Like you take anyone who's been in the service for, a little bit, I would say if people I've spoken to, anyone who's been in the service for like more than like the standard deployment, they are really analytical regardless of what they did in the service. Y'all could lead pretty much any team. Like just flat out, just because you were there, and your brain has now been wired that way. You're good at like zooming way out and seeing all the big problems and then being able to immediately zoom into like the one area that you want to fix. Y'all are really, really good at that in my experience, and you don't talk about it enough, right? Like you're really good at like talking about this big picture. Like I was in charge of all of this stuff, but zoom in more and talk about like this one time I found this one thing that we were really able to like hone in on, because that's what a lot of traditional capitalism is about, right? Like you look at like any product, like this is a weird example, but bear with me. Like toilet paper does one thing, right? One thing really, really well, and that's the entire business. That's capitalism, right? It's not, the Charmin company is not like, we sell shower curtains and brand new handles for your doorknobs.
That's actually a really good example, dude.
They sell one thing. And so the fact that you can look at the whole organization and then zoom all the way down, it's like, it's great that you can do this and we love that, but we got to see you go all the way into the macro, right? Like, I know you have the ability because I've seen it. Get better at selling that. Pick that thing and really, really zoom in on it.
I actually really appreciated that. Because as you said, that is like probably the most painful pain point is people who are qualified who feel like they don't know anything, and then they kind of restrict themselves from even putting themselves out there because they're like, oh, but like I don't have any skills. Like there's plenty of people. The previous episode with a close friend of mine, she's in defense contracting as well. She was like, I didn't learn anything in the military as far as like like skills. And and then she immediately walks into like a program manager job. And she was like, oh, I know all these things. That's the problem that we specifically have. But I appreciate that, because that's actually a really good note that, as people listen to this episode, I hope that really sits with them and resonates with them, because when I got out, I was like, I have no idea. I was like, I'm going to work at Home Depot because, like, I don't know anything about, teams and like all this other stuff. And then I started looking at all these other jobs, and I was like, oh, actually, I'm qualified to do this. I'm qualified to do that. Like, I didn't even think about that, like, kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
Sweet, man. All right. Where can people find you?
Best way to find us is through the website strategicallyhuman.org. There you'll find links to the book, to the white paper, and a contact form if you are interested in that one-on-one coaching. And that's probably the best place to find us.
Sweet, man. Thanks. And thanks again for the just coming on the show. And then thanks everybody else again for listening. Like, subscribe, do all the stuff that I'm sure I was supposed to say because it's YouTube and podcasting and stuff. But tell your friends, and I will see you next time. Thanks.